What is gender? This question is a concrete example of a much larger problem in society and in philosophy. Let me set the stage for how we got here. Then we will spiral around. Since you were born, you, here in the 21st century, whether you yourself were born in the 21st, 20th, or even the 19th century, have been experiencing the same world, which roughly follows this pattern. You are born into a world experiencing conflict and scientific and philosophic discoveries, none of which you are aware of. As far as you know, reality is just what's in front of your face. Your world is your home, your parents, your school, your friends, the streets and parks you walk on, and, over time, the information your parents and teachers are teaching you, which at first only deals with the world in front of you. Later they introduce history and social studies and begin to show you a world outside of yourself, and you wake up to a world that exists far beyond your reach. This is also occurring just as you are starting to make an impact on the wider world yourself. You get a sense that you can have a causal effect on the world, and in turn, you realize that the world has had an impact on you and your world. You can teach others new things, and then you realize that you were taught from someone else. Here then comes the first philosophical issue that an adolescent must deal with. How do I know if what I was taught was true? This question is further hammered in by the discovery of imaginary beings like Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, gods, are all just that, imaginary, not real. And it's not just that you thought imaginary beings were real, but that your parents and teachers lied to you about them. If your parents and teachers can, and have lied, why should we trust them? Descartes would be overjoyed to know how many children reached his first meditation so quickly. And given that we have Descartes, we already have some authority to defend our newly formed adolescent thoughts. What can be called into doubt? In fact, this is exactly how Descartes reached this conclusion. Some years ago, I was struck by the large number of falsehoods that I had accepted as true in my childhood, and by the highly doubtful nature of the whole edifice that I had subsequently based on them. I realized that it was necessary, once in the course of my life, to demolish everything completely and start again right from the foundation if I wanted to establish anything at all in the sciences that was stable and likely to last. Returning to the first question, what is gender? Well, given what we know at this moment, gender is that which our parents and teachers told us it is. Or, that is the thought process of the majority of thinkers on this topic today. So what is the problem of gender? The problem can be elucidated by the follow-up question. By what epistemological worldview are you using as a basis of concepts? There is absolutely no point in talking about gender and what it is before resolving what we mean by concepts and knowledge and truth and facts. And this is the true problem with gender as a topic in society today. There are 3 major branches of approaching this, and all of the branches are using 3 or more different meanings for the words required in the topic discussion. Let's return back to our childhood or adolescent selves. You just found out that your parents lied to you about Santa, and you are having your first existential crisis. What is real? What else is a lie? Does God exist? Does science work to discover things, or is it all just storytelling? This is your introduction to epistemology. The whole point of epistemology is that you can think that something that is not true is true. If you could never accept a falsehood as true, then it would just be metaphysics. Computers are metaphysical and are never wrong, even if chock full of bugs. So what path of epistemology do you take? 99.99% of children or adolescents at this point have zero clue that they are doing epistemology. They know none of the philosophical terms or descriptions, and yet each and every time they activate the nodes connected to this topic, they are carving out their epistemological framework. A child of religious parents might continue to accept the views of their parents, given the certainty their parents have about not lying about God. The parents do believe in God, and besides Santa, a fun childhood game-like idea, or however the child may rationalize this, the parents have mostly been honest. So the child accepts that lies can exist, but God does exist. His brother may disagree. That first lie was enough for his brother to cut off all of the parents' ideas and any teacher or adult that agrees with them. The first child becomes a mystic, his brother a skeptic. The first adopts, without thought, the philosophy of intrinsicism. The second, the philosophy of subjectivism. Let me demonstrate that this is the problem of gender, aka the problem of concepts. Every issue that comes up with gender will also apply to these examples. What is a right? Where do rights come from? What is honesty? Is honesty always right? What is life? What is force? What is logic? What are numbers? What is a chair? The fight that occurs over gender and all the above concepts is the fight over schools of epistemology. If you want to know what someone is going to answer to all of the above, you need not ask each of these questions. You can instead ask them, what is? And how do we know it? The first child responds, God is. God put the essence of each concept inside it, and we extract it by some mystical means. The brother responds, nothing is. We, at most, look for family resemblances and categorize them as such by our subjective standards. When you ask these two to sort out their differences and come to an agreement on what life, liberty, happiness, force, rights, gender, sex, animal, etc. means, total chaos will reign. Nothing will be sorted out. The shouting match commences. Check this for yourself. In a moment, pause this video. Open up a new tab, get on YouTube, search, what is X? What concept you pick after is up to you. If you find an active comment section, you will be able to divide the arguments into 2 or 3 groups. The third group is rare and is either an objectivist or some mixed bag of wackiness. The 2 major groups will argue as such. Group 1 will say, X is what we say X is, and can change it when we want. And Group 2 will say, X has a fixed essence that we cannot change, and which may or may not be a thing which we know not what. Go on, give it a shot. Even, what is a ball in baseball? This will generate this fight. A ball is whatever the umpire says it is. No, a ball is a ball, and the blind umpire needs to retire for missing that call. Culture war? What culture war? This is an epistemological war. We cannot get along because, as former President of the United States of America, William Jefferson Clinton once said in the face of a national scandal, it depends upon what the meaning of the word is. This line is looked at as a joke by all those that heard it or know of it, and yet the president makes a fine point, given the culture he lives in. What is? If you are a mystic, what is given to you by a super or supra-natural entity. And how you know it is that you are either a pure blank mirror that receives and reflects exactly the essence which is intrinsic in the objects perceived, or the supernatural entity transmits the thoughts directly into your mind. This means that we can truly know things, know reality, but we cannot form any sort of methodology for discovering knowledge. Knowledge comes when it comes. If you are a skeptic, what is nothingness. Everything is becoming. Nothing is static. And we cannot know anything about what reality truly is. The best we can do is arbitrarily lump family resemblances together. This is where the culture war lives. What is gender? Depends who you ask. What is life? Depends who you ask. What is leftism? Depends who you ask. What is conservatism? Depends who you ask. All of this can be quite dizzying. Let's pull back a bit. Let's go back to our childhood selves again. What do we have available to us after we learn about Santa Claus? We have 4 items to help guide us. We have facts. We have knowledge. We have truth. And we have certainty. What we say about these 4 things will decide our epistemology. That epistemology is chosen without knowing that we are making such a choice, and this will affect our personality and sexuality at the same time. When you hold that you can be anything, including a wolf, that thinking is the only reason to have the shift to be attracted to wolves. See reference, furries. When you hold that women are produced by God for the purpose of reproduction, that thinking is the only reason to hold that marriage is duty. See reference, Ben Shapiro. Let's look at these 4 terms closer. Fact. Metaphysical. A fact is metaphysical and only metaphysical. Your knowledge or lack of knowledge has no effect on facts. To pull Ben Shapiro back for a second, facts don't care about your feelings. Facts cannot care at all, in fact, Ben. Example. Earth exists. The Earth exists whether you know it or not. No matter its shape or size, it is that which you are existing on as a human. Knowledge and truth. Metaphysics and epistemology. Knowledge is a grasp of a fact of reality. It is your connection to reality. It's something you have and hold and can put away and can pull back up later. You are on Earth and you know it. You grasp the fact that the ground exists outside of your existence, and even when you're not thinking about it, you are capable of pulling up the fact and your ties to it. Truth is the product of the recognition of the facts of reality. Given that facts exist, i.e., that A is A, then truth is the recognition of the identity of A, the recognition of reality as reality. Since Earth exists, it has a certain identity, and truth about the Earth requires that you recognize these, e.g., that the ground exists. Certainty. Epistemology. Certainty is entirely epistemological. You can be certain and wrong at the same time, and no one, in their right mind, thinks this is controversial. We were certain that Santa existed, and everything around us provided enough evidence to believe it wholeheartedly. We were wrong. End of story. This is the major crux of epistemology and what truly makes Ayn Rand's epistemology the savior of mankind. Ayn Rand was the first to fully express and provide arguments about how certainty gives no proof of knowledge or truth or facts. That feelings, emotions, whims, and votes are not guides to knowing reality. No matter how good it feels or how hard you rationalize it to yourself or others, certainty does not mean knowledge or facts. These 4 items have been given in the objectivist framework. This is how that third group views metaphysics and epistemology. In the umpire analogy, he is the one that argues, I call them as I see them. As against the intrinsicists, I call them as they are, and the skeptics, they are nothing until I call them. The objectivist says, facts are facts, and nothing can change that. Knowledge is possible and is acquired by a methodology. We need a methodology because a feeling of certainty is not enough to provide a connection to reality. The methodology is based on recognizing the identity of objects, finding what is true about objects, and grasping, holding, retaining, being able to recall these truths, those identities as facts which can be traced down to the perceptually given. The mystic says, facts are facts, and only God can change them. Knowledge is possible, and is acquired by divine revelation. We don't need a methodology, because certainty is a feeling God gave us to help us recognize the intrinsic facts He put into things. Any failure in my thinking or certainty is not due to any requirement of methodology, but is in fact caused by demons playing tricks on my mind and can be fixed by talking to a priest. Truth is God's word. The subjectivist says, facts are the baseline social constructs that we use to hang other arbitrary abstract concepts off of for the purpose of communication. Knowledge is not possible, and there is no true way to acquire it. Merely, we can only acquire partial knowledge, if any at all. Certainty is a feeling and cannot be wrong, as there is nothing to be wrong about. You just feel what you feel, and that's as close to facts and truth and knowledge and reality as you're ever going to get. Given this simplified view of the branches, we can see what the problem of gender is, and why it depends on who you ask. This channel clearly chooses objectivism as holding the correct view. However, such a defense of why I am correct isn't necessary here, as the point is only to show you that the problem of gender is the problem of epistemology, is the problem of knowledge, of truth, of certainty, and of facts. Let's look at gender from these 3 points of view. Intrinsic view. Gender is, if it is anything at all, tied to biology. It is the essence of different sexes. You cannot change it, nor your sex. You are what you are, and nothing but God Himself can change that. This was the view of sex and gender for thousands of years before the modern-day skeptics stepped in and changed that. Given that, culture developed around these terms, and having an intrinsic view, what it meant to be a woman, to be a man, or male, or female, or masculine, or feminine, became tied to intrinsic traits. To be a man had intrinsic meaning, such as strength, violence, war. To be a woman had intrinsic meaning, such as grace, cooperation, peace. To be a man had intrinsic actions, to fight, to build. These actions took place in certain places with certain environments, and the clothes best suited for these events became the clothes that men wear, men's clothing. To be a woman had intrinsic actions, to cook, to clean. These actions took place in certain places with certain environments, and the clothes best suited for these events became the clothes of women, women's clothing. Skeptic view. Gender is whatever you want it to be. If you feel your gender is one way today and different tomorrow, who are you to argue against your own feelings, your only faint connection to the reality you cannot truly know. The skeptics, the children that rebelled against their parents, as all children will, took the certainty their parents had as facts. They continue, if dresses are for girls, and I like dresses, then I am a girl. Since we are certain that dresses are for girls, then how can I deny my feelings about dresses and the fact that I must be a girl, despite being called a boy? I know I like dresses, and the doctor that brought me into this world and my parents only tell me that I'm a boy. But what they say depends on what they feel, and they can only experience their reality through their bodies, which is not my body, not my reality. My body says it feels good about dresses, and therefore my body feels like a girl. The skeptic gets himself very dizzy, and though his denial that the social constructs of gender hold any sway, i.e., the sexist views that intrinsicism forces, he is left with nothingness, which is fine for him, but he can no longer see that with which he is identifying as, when he feels his certainty about his gender, is nothing at all, or something entirely based on sexism qua intrinsicism. This brings us to the final piece of the puzzle of the problem of gender: concept formation. How do you form a concept as an intrinsicist? What about as a subjectivist? Concepts come from God, says the intrinsicist, and you don't form them. They come to you fully produced. Concepts are whatever you want them to be, says the subjectivist. They are formed by the subjective selection or democracy or by force from on high. Concepts are a mental integration of two or more units possessing the same distinguishing characteristics with their particular measurements omitted, says the objectivist. The objectivist has a methodology of achieving knowledge, his concepts, and as such he ensures that his concepts are true, meaning properly identify objects as they are in reality. Without this philosophy, the other two schools of epistemology are entirely lost. Over 2,000 years ago, a man named Thales said, "Hey, maybe every concrete entity is made up of one type of object." A few hundred years later, a man named Socrates applied this type of thinking to mental entities, i.e., abstract concepts, asking people, what is the one thing that makes up the concepts of things, such as justice? If all material is made up of water, as Thales said, is all justice made up of something too? Plato, his student, tried to answer this by going one step further and asking, if concepts like justice are made up of things, can it be said that all concepts are made up of one thing? Not just all justice is made up of justice essence stuff, and all love is made up by love essence stuff, but are all concepts made of one essence? Then he answered this with a resounding yes, and placed that essence in a different world detached from the world we experience, and that when you look at an object, it's your previous experience before birth, when you lived in the world of forms, which gives you all the abstract knowledge, and learning new concepts is actually just remembering. Later, his student Aristotle joined the discourse, and said that the world of forms is impossible and wrong. A thing is what it is. He invented logic, and suggested that the universal essence of the object is inside the object, removable only by mental processes, but never metaphysically. Some 1,000 years later, a man named John Locke went looking for this intrinsic essence, and found what he called the substratum, a thing we know not what. How did Locke achieve this goal? The same way gender theorists discovered gender nonconforming. Abstraction by subtraction. The major factor in the problem of gender, the problem of concept formation, is the philosophical dead end of abstraction through subtraction. Take a woman, take all women, remove all of their differences, their height, weight, race, personality, etc. What are you left with? Well, if you are objective, what is left are the distinguishing characteristics, with those particular measurements omitted, namely, that they are all adults, humans, and female. Ergo, the objectivist definition of a woman is adult, human, female. To the subjectivist, what is left is nothing but a feeling. A feeling of what? What is a what, says the subjectivist. The intrinsicist in this case piggybacks off of the objective answer and also says adult, human, female. But, unlike the objectivist, they cannot tell you how they came to that definition. To them, that definition is just what God wrote. If you push them far enough, they will claim that the subjectivist is right. But the feelings of certainty of gender are ultimately a battle of whims between God and the devil, fighting it out through your mind. And that you need to also always have certainty that God is real and would not deceive you, in order to combat any feelings which violate the social order which is in place because God put it there. This is the problem with gender, and rights, and love, and honesty, and justice, and freedom, etc. The battle between those that gain abstraction by feelings of certainty from godly inspiration, and those that gain abstraction through subtraction, and have found a thing they know not what. They rely on a feeling of certainty without context or meaning. And this is why there is a culture war. And most people don't have a clue that the cause of these shouting matches is the result of two sides accepting their feelings of certainty as facts. How do you know you're the opposite gender? You feel it with certainty. How do you know God exists? You feel it with certainty. The problem is that most people use a feeling of certainty as evidence for facts. That's it, that's all. The solution. The Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology by Ayn Rand.